Hi everyone and welcome back to another episode of Discard Dead, where we like to open boosters, boxes and decks of out-of-print trading card games. And today we'll be looking at Towers in Time by Thunder Castle Games. In the beginning, travel between dimensions was thought a novelty, until wizards realized there was much to discover and to gain, an ultimate power. There once were plenty of wizards to share around. It took no effort to gain power, and help was easily obtained. But soon there were too many wizards, and not enough space, and they began to take with force. The only places to hide were great towers built between dimensions. They required great power to hold them, and even more to invade. Thunderous conflicts ensued, havoc wrought as weaker wills failed, shields felled, and towers collapsed. Victorious wizards pillaging the spoils before escaping. You are such a wizard yourself now. You have studied. You can see the power of the elements and have the knowledge of creation and destruction. You also have the ability to open portals to your enemies' domains. But it takes great effort and stress to hold the portals open, and so your energy is channeled into shields to keep your domain safe, although they will collapse if they are attacked. It is a great risk, but must be done in the search for a greater power. Before the game, make sure you have your deck ready. You will need at least 50 cards with a maximum of 4 of any card. Be sure to include a number of sources, plenty of creatures, and some good support cards. Now this is your domain, or your play area, with your deck placed here and discarded cards here. Shields are set up here, sources along this row, and your towers above them with 3 spaces for placing minor, median, and major creatures, while this little region to the side is your limbo space, but more on that later. After shuffling your deck, place the top 5 cards in your shield spaces. They must be protected because when those shields are depleted, you lose. Draw 14 cards. If you do not have at least 2 sources among them, you may shuffle your hand back into your deck and draw another 14 cards. You may now play up to 8 cards from your hand for free among creatures, objects, and sources, following these placement rules. You must have a source in play before you can place creatures. You cannot play any spells. You may not put a median creature in a tower that does not have a minor creature, and you may not put a major creature in a tower that does not have a median creature. You may not put creatures into a tower if their element does not match the tower's source, except for neutral creatures. You may not put good and evil creatures together in the same tower. If you have more than 6 cards in your hand after your initial placement, discard cards until you do. Finally, the player whose creature has the highest attack value may take the first action in the action phase. If they tie, go to the next highest attack, and so on. If they tie down to the last creature, flip a coin. In this game, there are no separate turns where a player progresses through the phases and then passes to the next. Instead, phases are completed together, with each player performing simultaneously before moving to the next phase. First, the beginning phase. Straighten all sapped and taxed cards, turning them back to an upright position. In the maintenance phase, you pay any maintenance cost on any sustained spells that require them. Any sustained spells that you do not pay to maintain now are discarded. In the draw phase, both players draw a card. And in the action phase, the turn player may now take an action. If they do not wish to make an action, they may pass to allow the other player to take theirs. Players may now alternate making actions until both players pass, or one player passes 3 times in a row. The turn then ends, both players discard down to 6 cards, and play resumes at the beginning phase. The player who ended the turn by passing now goes last when the next action phase begins. Each card, be it a spell, monster, or artifact, has the same basic info, but instead of words to describe their abilities, these are laden with icons. look at this Mjorn Elemental. Here is the card name, and these 4 black shapes. These are how much temper they provide, their cost, their attack, and their defense. The card image, text box, artist, and the border as well, which directly relates to the card's element. Seems simple. This section is where you'll find all the other stuff. What kind of card it is, any of its abilities, and in some cases what kind of damage it deals. I'll break these up into sections because there are 32 different icons now. This is how much temper, the game's resource, is generated by sapping the card. Creatures produce living temper, while objects produce non-living temper. If the card has an element, then the temper drawn from it is also of that element. This is how much temper is required to transport the card from limbo if it is an object or a creature. Spells don't need to be transported and can be played directly from your hand. The base attack value of a creature, or the attack bonus it provides if it is a totem or an item. As with attack, this is the creature's defense, or the totem or item's bonus. Followers are blindly loyal creatures, such as warriors or war machines, that allow you to transport them through dimensions. They can hold items and take on totems. They are either minor, median, or major, and produce living temper of their own element. Totems are animals that can be either transported as a minor creature or be attached to a follower to enhance it with their own icons. They add living temper of the follower they are attached to and can also add their status to the attached follower when attacking shields. Monsters are creatures that are bound, summoned, or bribed into service. They cannot hold items, nor can they take a totem. They are also either minor, median, or major, and can produce living temper of their element. There are 3 levels of status: minor, median, and major. When transporting creatures from limbo, you must have a minor creature in a tower before transporting a median creature to the same tower, and a median creature before transporting a major creature. It is also important when attacking shields, but we'll talk about this later. Sources are places from which a wizard can draw power from to cast spells or transport their minions with. You must have a source at the base of every tower, and it is a regular action to transport a source into play. They produce non-living temper of their element, and when you play a source to the base of a tower, that tower can only have creatures that match the source's element, along with neutral creatures or artifacts. Some sources can produce temper of multiple elements, and when you sap them, you decide which element to draw. You are still only limited to one element of creature in the tower. Items are special objects that can enhance their equipped follower and grant abilities. They are transported into your domain, equipped immediately to a follower. Followers can have any number of items attached, but may only gain the benefits from up to 2 at a time. Artifacts are objects too powerful to be held by followers. They can be placed in a tower and are either minor, median, or major. Artifacts have attack and defense attributes and can attack and defend as if they were creatures. All spells have a casting cost in temper that must match the element of the spell, and living temper for black magic and non-living temper for white magic. Instant spells are cast as an action, and their effect lasts for the rest of the turn. Spells that do direct damage to a creature or object will affect it only in the turn that it is casting. This icon is also shared with the instant effect quality on creature or object cards. Sustain spells are enchantments that remain in play after the turn they were cast. They have a cost to maintain them, showing a cost icon next to the symbol to tell you how much it costs to keep it in play. Most of them have attribute icons to show how they can enhance an enchanted creature. These next icons are used not only for magic spells, but also specifically element-aligned creatures, sources, and magic items with abilities. Fire magic is the most destructive. Fire creatures, which are commonly aligned with destruction and war, must be played where there is a fire source. Water magic is the basis of life. Water creatures usually cannot survive unless surrounded by water. Earth magic is the magic of strength, fortitude, and stability. Earth creatures tend to be tougher than most. Air magic is the most delicate yet most versatile, the essence of unpredictability, simultaneously symbolizing wisdom and foolishness. Black magic represents foul power, drawing essence from the living. Anything produced from living temper is by nature evil and may not occupy a tower that has white magic or good creatures. Black magic may only use temper from creatures and so can be placed in a tower without sapping the tower's source. Unless specified on the card, black creatures lose their powers and take on the characteristics of the black spell card that was used. This icon also appears on creatures that are evil aligned. White magic is the purest form of magic. It represents life and may never be used with temper drawn from living creatures. Using white magic is inherently good as it doesn't twist life for a purpose. As such, you can only use temper drawn from objects such as sources to use white magic. White magic is also the purview of good aligned creatures. This final selection are all the different qualities and abilities that are found on creatures and objects and some spells. A fast creature can attack and perform an additional regular action other than attacking again. A quick creature has the advantage in combat, where two creatures clash and simultaneously deal damage to each other, potentially killing each other. A quick creature inflicts and resolves their damage first, before the other should it survive. The creature's attacks are considered magical. There are some creatures that are immune to damage unless it is from a magical attack. You may spend temper to regenerate any creature with this ability, which must be the appropriate type. A fire creature must use fire temper. A black creature requires living temper, etc. Regenerated creatures have their defense restored. Unless specified, a creature may regenerate at any time as long as the temper is available to spend, and killed creatures may be regenerated, while destroyed ones may not. Regeneration counts as a regular action, but may be done even if the card is taxed. Creatures with fly may attack and defend from the air, and only other creatures with fly can defend against them. Creatures with ranged attacks may target a vulnerable creature with fly. A flying creature may choose to be grounded on his action, allowing non-flying troops to block them, or if they are blocking a non-flying creature. A ranged attack may target any vulnerable target and deal damage equal to the strength of the attack. Unless specified, you may only make a ranged attack towards a vulnerable creature, although making a ranged attack will make the attacker vulnerable. This is a regular action. Creatures with this ability may attack together in a group. While in this group, should they be blocked or if they attack a vulnerable creature, you decide how the damage is inflicted to them. However, evil and good creatures cannot be in the same combat group. A card with this icon has an ability that requires an action. A paralyze ability causes a target to become unable to take actions until next turn. It doesn't need to target a vulnerable creature, but you then become vulnerable afterwards. Invisible creatures cannot be targeted by minor creatures or followers. Walls are sustained spells that can fortify a tower. All creatures in the tower receive the benefits as long as the requirements are met. A gate is a source that has some special ability associated with it that ends up destroying the tower it is built upon. A gate can provide temper of any of the 4 elements. A regular action uses up your creature's action until the end of the turn. Players alternate making regular actions with their creatures and objects, starting with the turn player. Once you declare an action, it cannot be revoked or interrupted. When using a card to make a regular action, turn it sideways to mark it as used. This is called taxing, and is only to show the card cannot be reused until the next turn. Regular actions include moving a creature or artifact. This takes a regular action and taxes the creature that moves. The card is moved to another tower. In the case of creatures, they may not move to a tower that has a different elemental source and whose creatures are of different elements to the moving creature. You are not, however, restricted in terms of status placement requirements. That is, you may move a median or major creature even if there is no minor or median creature respectively, although they must still occupy a space that can support them. So median creature must be in the median or major position, or major creature in the major position. Moving an item. This costs the follower who will receive the item their action and taxes them until next turn. Moving a totem. The follower who receives the totem and the totem itself are considered to have used their actions and must wait until next turn to act again. The totem can also be moved to its own position instead. Attacking. An attack takes a regular action, and creatures attack one at a time with the exception of creatures with the army ability. Creatures are considered to have used their action as you declare the attack, which starts a special combat phase. Defending. A creature will also use their action if they are chosen to defend as soon as their defense is declared. You may defend with more than one creature if you like, but the attacker decides how damage is distributed. Pull down a shield. You may take down one of your shields to play it without paying its cost, unless the card has a variable cost, in which case you must pay it. Transporting. You may pay a creature or object's cost to move it from limbo into your domain, into a space in a tower that can hold it. Costs are paid with temper by sapping sources and creatures you control, providing their element is the same as the card you are paying for. Note that objects do not require temper of a specific element, only as long as it is as much as the cost. Creatures and objects must already be in limbo before you can play it. If limbo is full, you must make room before anything else. Further, when transporting a card, it must go into a tower whose source was sapped to pay for it. If the source of a tower is already sapped, you may not bring anything into that tower this turn. If you have no sources available, you may not transport. Free actions do not use up your action for a turn, and you may take as many free actions as you like, as long as it is your turn to make actions. They cannot affect your opponent and include dropping a spell, such as terminating the effect of a sustained spell, which is a free action and can be done at any time. The card is then removed from play. Put a card into limbo. All transporting is done through limbo. You can put a card into limbo at any time, but remember limbo can only hold up to 6 cards. If it is full, you cannot move another creature or object into limbo until you make some space. Sapping. Sapping temper from a creature or a source. Remember that each of your sources and creatures can only be used once per turn. Once they have produced temper, they cannot produce again or make another action until the next turn. After a source or creature has produced temper, turn it sideways so that you know that you used it. Maintaining spells. During the maintenance phase, spend temper to maintain your sustained spells. If you do not, the sustained spell is gone and immediately removed from play. A creature may initiate the combat phase by declaring an attack as their action. At this time, the game is temporarily halted and a combat phase begins. When combat is resolved, the game resumes and players may alternate, taking regular actions again. Any creature that participates in the combat phase, whether they attack or defend, or affects the other side in any way, becomes vulnerable and remains vulnerable until the combat phase ends. You may not move creatures or objects during combat, nor can you transport. Every action you take must affect the flow of combat in some way. During the combat phase, each player may make as many regular actions as they choose, however they may not interrupt their opponent. Once you have made all the actions you wish, it is your opponent's turn to respond with their own. Creatures that are killed or destroyed in combat must immediately be saved or be removed from play. If you announce that it is your opponent's turn to make an action and they are still dead, it is too late to save them and they must be removed. Finally, combat may be ended by either player simply by passing instead of taking an action. First, select a creature to attack your opponent. Your opponent may then do nothing or choose a blocking creature. If they do not select a blocking creature, they lose the chance to block it entirely. Then they may continue by making any number of other actions, to which you have the chance to respond with actions of your own. Then it is your opponent's turn to target a vulnerable creature, after which you may respond with your own actions, and so you and your opponent act and respond and act and respond until there are no more actions to take. If a creature is vulnerable due to making an action and is not targeted by the end of the other player's turn, that creature is no longer vulnerable, having returned to their tower. At the end of the combat phase, any creatures that have less damage than their defense are restored, and any shield that has taken less damage to destroy it is also restored. Here is an example from the online FAQ which I will visualize for you. Player A announces an attack with mountain dwarves. Player B responds by blocking it with a median air elemental, grounding it. Damage is now calculated. Player B's elemental has taken 3 points of damage, which is enough to kill it, but it isn't actually dead yet. Player A's mountain dwarves have taken 2 points of damage. Both creatures will remain vulnerable until the end of combat. Combat continues with player B, the defender, making her actions. She uses the instant ability of her Ulath healers to prevent up to 5 damage to her median air elemental, in this case preventing 3 damage. Then, with her Mranth or Catapult, she fires a ranged attack of 3 at player A's mountain dwarves, bringing the total damage on that creature to 5, which is enough to kill it, though it too is not dead yet. Player B tells player A that she is finished with her actions. Currently, the mountain dwarves, air elemental, Ulath healers, and orc catapult are vulnerable. Player A uses a heal spell on the mountain dwarves, but does not retaliate against player B's healers or orcs, instead using his dwarf cannon to fire a ranged attack of 3 at player B's median air elemental, which is enough damage to kill it again. Player A tells player B that he is done. At this point, the mountain dwarves, air elemental, and dwarf cannon are vulnerable. The Ulath healers and orc catapult cease being vulnerable after not being acted against. Player B fires a range attack of 2 from his Karak dive bombers at the dwarf cannon, enough to kill the cannon. He is done. The mountain dwarves, air elemental, and dive bombers are vulnerable. The dwarf cannon ceases being vulnerable, having not been utilized. Player A could either heal his dwarf cannon or range attack the Karak dive bombers, but instead passes, ending the combat. The results of combat being player A's dwarf cannon and player B's median air elemental are dead and removed from play. Before the game starts, your 5 shields are dealt face up. As you deal damage and bring down your opponent's shields, they are discarded, removing their last shield to bring you victory. To take down one of your opponent's shields, a major creature or its equivalent must get through their defenses. The creature must not be blocked and must be alive at the end of the combat phase. Multiple creatures may get through in a single turn, and these are cumulative for taking down shields. A major creature can take down a shield by itself, as can 2 median creatures or 4 minor creatures. This damage accumulates and is afflicted to shields progressively. If a median creature, then a minor creature, and then another median creature attack and are not blocked, the first shield will take 2 damage, then 1, then another from the second median creature, with that leftover damage inflicted to the next shield. When the turn ends, a partially damaged shield, however, will return to full strength. A tower consists of a source at its base and 3 spaces for creatures and/or objects. You may move creatures out of the tower, but you may not remove the source from under them. When a creature is placed in a tower, it is safe from attacks, but some card effects that do not require a vulnerable creature may affect it in a tower after all. It is important to note that creatures of different elements cannot be placed in a tower together, nor can good and evil creatures occupy the same tower. You may still place neutral creatures or artifacts. When each space is filled, the tower becomes empowered, providing bonuses to all creatures that match the tower's source. Be mindful, major creatures can only be placed in the major position, median creatures can be placed in either the median or major, and minor creatures can be placed in any position. Further, while transporting median or major creatures from limbo, you are required to have a minor or median creature respectively. although you can move creatures into another tower's positions without requiring a lesser status creature to already be in place. If a creature is immune to certain effects, it will not take damage from those effects and cannot be the target of cards that use those effects. Diffusion happens when a creature is forced to leave the tower, when they're removed from a source, or forced to live on a source that doesn't match their element. A diffused creature is always vulnerable and suffers a -1 penalty to attack and defense and temper production. Empowerment happens when a tower is full, as in it has a source and has a creature or artifact in each space. All creatures that match the tower's source element gains a +1 bonus to their attack and defense. Your creatures are safe from assault while in their tower until they take an action to target your opponent. When they do, they become vulnerable to attacks. A vulnerable creature remains vulnerable while involved in combat until they are passed by. You may only target vulnerable creatures unless the card's effect states it can target non-vulnerable creatures. Hey everybody, thanks for sticking around again to learn how to play Towers in Time. I know I repeated some stuff here and there, but it's all for the sake of teaching. It's been a while since I've done one of these that took so long, but sometimes there's just really no getting around it. Anyway, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye!